Okay, good morning again, and we are starting the 12th year of Arbi Psachim. So we're going to talk about a number of points in the tour in Shulchan Aruch today, and Reish Ayin Gimel, Sif Daled, and Sif Hey. Starting with Sif Daled. So the tour, as we saw, says that you can be Motzi Acherim by Kiddush, even if you're already Yotzi yourself, because the Breit Beer Gofen of Kiddush, even though the klal is that Birchas Hanenin, the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah and Daf Chav Tes, that the Gemara says, Alfa Pisha Yatza, Kol Brachas Kulan, Alfa Pisha Yatza Motzi, Chusin Birchas Alechem, Birchas Hayayin, Shim Lo Yatza Motzi, Vim Yatza Ena Motzi. If you already Yotze yourself, when it comes to Birchas Alechem, Birchas Hayayin, which means just not Shabbos, just regular Breit Beer Gofen or regular Motzi during the week, at least the Pashtus, that's what it's referring to, then you cannot be Motzi if you already Yotze yourself, because it's only Birchas Hanenin. And the klal of the din of Arvus, the din of Arvus does not apply to Birchas Hanenin, because the Gemara says you could say by Birchas Mitzvahs, so then the person is Mechuyev. If the person is Mechuyev, then the pshat in Arvus is like the meaning of Arvus, the Mishnah Berurah says, it comes in the Rishonim, is that if he's mechuyev in a certain mitzvah, I'm also mechuyev in that mitzvah. And even though I was already yotze that mitzvah, if he wasn't, then since Kol Yisrael Rebbeinu that was there, then by them not being yotze, then I myself am not fully yotze that mitzvah either. So Arvus creates a chiyuv on me that my mitzvah is only finished b'shleimus when I make sure that the other person is yotze as well. Everybody else applies as well. So that puts the chiyuv on me to make sure that he's yotze as well, and that applies to Birchas Mitzvahs, but not to Birchas Hanenin, because the Gemara says that you could not be nena and not make a bracha. Who says you're mechuyev to do that? Fine, if you want to eat, you need to make a bracha, but who said you have to eat? So I'm not mechuyev. I'm not shuldig. I'm not responsible for you to want to. Just you decide you want to eat right now. So that's when, with regards to regular Breit Beer Gofen, regular hamotzi. The Gemara says, "Boy Rava, Birchas Alechem shel Matzah, Birchas Hayayin shel Kiddush Hayamaru." Kevin de Chovahu Mapik. You say that since it's a chiyuv to eat matzah and to make a bracha on the yayin for Kiddush, then it's a chova. So I can't say the minute it's a chova, even though it's Birchas Hanenin, the minute it's a chova, then you can't say on the person, okay, don't be nena and don't make a bracha. Because he can't just not be nana. He's mechuyev to be nana because that's the way to be yotze those mitzvahs. So therefore, the arvus applies to it, and it could be motzi. O dilma bracha lav chovahi. Maybe sof kol sof the bracha. This is a bracha which is a Birchas Hanenin be'etzem. Essentially, it's a Birchas Hanenin, and Chazal only said what they said. So a bracha that's a Birchas Hanenin biyisodo in bishorsho and its mahus, its essences as a Birchas Hanenin, that can't be motzi, even though right now it happens to be it's attached to a mitzvah. The Gemara says, Tashma, the Amra Vashi, ki avina be'ra papi, havim mekadosh lon, v'chav asa arise medabra, havim mekadosh lahu. Bring a ride from a Maisa with Rashi that we're by Rav Papi, he made kiddush for us, and then when his sharecropper showed up from the field, he made a kiddush for him as well, even though it was already yotze. So we see that you can make the Breit Beer Gofen for somebody, even though you're already yotze yourself, because the way Rashi explains is that since it's a chiyuv over here, Rashi goes through three levels. That he says, "Kevin de chovahi," says Rashi, "Achilas matzah chovalah, v'chen kiddush yom chovalah." So number one, these things are a chiyuv. Number two, v'yefshar shelo b'hana. Since they're a chova, you can't say that you can't not be nena. And that hana that you can't do without is also impossible without a bracha, because you can't be nana malamazeh without a bracha. Nim says a mitzvah tluya b'bracha birchas hana amapik. Therefore, this mitzvah turns out after those three steps is tali and this birchas hana. Therefore, you can be motzi. Odilma birchas hana lav chova the mitzvah asya. Shaf b'chol hanoyos yinahagas. You can't, since of course, this bracha is knowing by all hanos. The other side was to say that you can't turn this into a Birchas Mitzvahs when it's be'etzem a birchas hana. Those are the two studies of the Gemara, according to Rashi, and we're machriya that to the tzad to say that since the mitzvah is tali in this birchas hana, therefore it takes on the nature of a birchas mitzvahs, even though be'etzem it's a birchas hana, birchas hanenin. That's the way Rashi learns the Gemara. Now, and that's the halacha of the tour that you can be motzi acherem. That's the halacha ma'isa, even if you're yotzi yourself. The Beis Yosef brings a machlokas by Kedusha Rabbah on Kiddush Shabbos morning. Could I also be motzi that all there is Breit Agafen. They don't have a birchas mitzvahs like you do, like a birchas kiddush like you do Friday night. So he brings a machlokas. According to Mordechai, you can't be motzi by kiddush or shachris, since he says the lashon of Mordechai is kevin she'enu mevarach ela birchas hanenin levad. Since all you're making is a birchas hanenin, then you can't be motzi. But Rabbeinu Yerucham says even though the bracha you're making is only birchas hanenin, kamakom kevin mishum the mitzvah lekadesh umavarach. Since the reason you're doing it is that's a mitzvah, motzi bo acherim, and it could be motzi others. So the Beis Yosef brings a raya to the Yerucham from the tour in Simon Taf Pei Daled that there's machlokas of poskim if I can be motzi if by karpas by Leil Seder by Tibul Rishon by eating karpas, so you make Breit Adama. Could I be motzi if I'm not eating right now the karpas? Could I make the Adama for others who don't know how to make it? So they bring down the from the it's a Shitas Arush and the Rif. You can be motzi the birchas karpas the Adama even though you're not eating it yourself. So you see over there that's mamash nothing but a birchas hanenin over there, only Breit Adama. So you see over there a raya gemura that, and nobody's cholok on that. I mean, Allah l'maisa, that's how we take on. So we see the our hachra l'maisa is that even though there is only birchas hanenin, if the reason you're making it is birchas mitzvahs, is for the sake of the mitzvah, not for the sake of the hana, then you could be motzi. That's the Beis Yosef brings a raya over there. You see, so
would that possibly only be if the person didn't know how to read it themselves, though? Isn't there a chiluk?
That's a separate shiloh. We'll see afterwards. The Ritzgeis. We'll get to there in a minute. That's a whole.
The case of the karpas was specifically where they didn't know.
They don't actually specify that necessarily, but yeah. So I mean, that'll depend on the Ritzgeis or not. We'll see that soon. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Okay, so how do I understand this Nukudas Machlokas between the Mordechai and the Rabbeinu Yerucham? That before we have a good raya that would possibly psakalocha like the Rabbeinu Yerucham, they could be motzi, but according to the Sfor Rashi, or it's a pasha like Rabbeinu Yerucham, you could be motzi because Rashi, the way Rashi builds the little building over here is that what would be the reason not to apply to Kedusha Rabbah the svara of Arvus to say I can be motzi even though I'm not yotzei myself. It would only be it's because it's only birchas hanenin. Shows who cares. The way Rashi built the building over here, the way he explained the lumdus is that the reason that the only reason not to say Arvus, let's say by birchas hayai, birchas motzi during the week, the Gemara says because you could say don't be nana and don't make a bracha. Who said you have to be nana? But when there's a mitzvah to be nana, and you can't be nana without a bracha, then automatically that bracha takes on the nature of a birchas mitzvahs because it hinges on this question of can you tell the person don't be nana and don't make a bracha. The minute you can't say that, the minute he's mechuyev to be nana, mitzvah the mitzvah, and you can't be nana without a bracha, then that itself gives the Torah's birchas mitzvahs to that birchas hanenin, as Rashi explained. So then what will be the svara of the Mordechai that you're not yotzei? So what I thought is, perhaps you could say that there's a ritva over here in Rosh Hashanah that explains the Gemara differently than Rashi. He explains that the reason, the maskana, we say that you could make, you could be motzi birchas hayayin, for example, on Kiddush Leil Seder or matzah. He says because since you have a birchas mitzvahs, like you have a birchas kiddush Friday night, and you have Aberchas Ashirka L'Sham Mitzvanu Al Achilas Matzah. So you have a Berchas Mitzvahs by Achilas Matzah, you have a Berchas Mitzvahs by the Yain of Kiddush. So the Ritva says that since you have that, and that's the main reason you're eating it, is because of that mitzvah, so then the Berchas Hanenin is nigrar after the Berchas Mitzvahs. And it becomes like one unit together with the Berchas Mitzvahs. So basically the Berchas Mitzvah schleps along the Berchas Hanenin along with it to turn the whole unit into a Berchas Hanenin. That's what the Ritva says. So Mela, it's very geschmack to explain that'll be the svara of the Mordechai. According to Rashi, it's not about that at all. According to Rashi, like we said, it's about if this hana has to be, and you can't do it without this hana, then automatically Arvis kicks in. And since I can't be nana without this bracha, then the bracha itself, Berchas Hanenin itself on its own right, turns into Berchas Mitzvahs. According to, and therefore it makes sense that Shabbos in the morning, there's no other bracha but that. Still, the reason you have to eat, you have to drink in the morning, Kiddush, is for the sake of the mitzvah, and I can't do that without Brei Gafen. So on its own right, it takes on that nature. However, if you hold like the Ritva, that it's only because the Berchas Hanenin is nigrar, it's schlepped along with the Berchas Mitzvahs. The Shabbos morning, you don't have that. All you have is Berchas Hanenin, so there's nothing to schlepp it to turn it into Berchas Mitzvahs. That'll be the story of the Mordechai. It doesn't work. And it's very geschmack. And now you look at the Lashon of the Mordechai, the Beis Yosef brings down. I didn't really understand it before. With the Ritva, it makes a lot of sense. The words are, he says, Enu yochel lahotzi on Shachris in the morning. Came she'enu mavarach ela birchas hanenin levad. Since all you're making is a birchas mitzvahs alone. According to Rashi, those words have no meaning. Who cares if you're making, that's all you're making levad. It's nothing to do with, the whole shal had nothing to do with making a different bracha.
Does the Ritva not hold of Arvos at all, or?
No, of course he does for sure. But he's saying that it only works when it comes to Berchas Hanenin, to be mostly someone with the Berchas Hanenin when it's in the context of Kiddush, even though generally Arvos doesn't work for Berchas Hanenin, it does work when it's becomes one unit with a Berchas Mitzvahs. Berchas Mitzvahs for sure there's Arvos.
So even though there's Arvos, but when you're only making a Berchas Hanenin, you're not able to
transform the Berchas Hanenin into Berchas Mitzvahs to say that there's Arvos on it.
Uh-huh.
So, in other words, the cloud, the Gemara says, you could be not nene and not make a bracha. So then it's like one getter for all Berchas Hanenin. Therefore, since that's the general situation of Berchas Hanenin, then Chazal just said one blanket thing, that even though there might be a chiyuv over here, sof kosof, it's only Berchas Hanenin. You only be mahapech the Berchas Hanenin to Berchas Mitzvahs when it's nigrar and it becomes a unit together with a real Berchas Mitzvahs. Then Arvos will kick in for the Berchas Hanenin as well.
Well, what was the raya the Rebbe said that the Beis Yosef brings for Rabbeinu Yerucham?
He brings a raya to it from the Tur and Taf Pei Daled that paskins that it could be motzi Brei Adama by Karpas. Even though all there is Brei Adama, there's no Berchas Mitzvahs together with it.
Would the Mordechai disagree with that?
So it's a machlokes Hashem over there, so I guess I'll be cholok on that. But he's saying bring a raya to Psak Halacha, that's our Psak over there, and therefore it'll carry over to Kiddush Rabbah as well. As far as we're concerned, so, it's not a kasha on the Mordechai. Mordechai can be cholok on that, but as far as we're concerned, halacha, he's clearing halacha l'maisa. So we have a raya from there, halacha l'maisa, that if it works there, it'll work for Kiddush Rabbah as well. Because you don't look at you look at the.
The Tur is clearing halacha l'maisa.
Beis Yosef.
I'm saying, right. So I'm saying, so Mordechai might argue with that also.
Yeah, he might argue with that. I mean, I'm sure he will. Yeah.
Right. So I'm saying that wasn't. So why was it a raya against the Mordechai originally? It wasn't a raya.
Not
it was a raya that
halacha.
Okay, I misunderstood.
Yeah, sorry.
So, but as the Rebbe was just trying to, Varn, what was the Mordechai's lumdus? What was his?
Right.
Okay.
Mordechai himself is holding maybe like the Ritva that you need to have together with the Berchas Hanenin and also be coupled with the Berchas Mitzvahs in order to become a unit. In order to then for the Berchas Hanenin to take on the nature of Berchas Mitzvahs. That's I think a possible shot.
Where in Rosh Hashanah is that Ritva?
Right there in the sugya there, and we're learning. halacha l'maisa, the Ramah, which you saw that Ramah paskins like Rabbeinu Yerucham, like the Raya of the Beis Yosef, that halacha l'maisa you could be motzi Kiddush Rabbah even though you're not nana with them. I just had a tzarachin and why the Shulchan Aruch didn't bring it himself. Only the Ramah brought it after the Beis Yosef brought such a stark Raya that we paskin that way. I'm not sure why the Shulchan Aruch left it out. I don't have an answer for that. Okay, just a Nakuda Agavorche, that the way the Beis Yosef brings down the Mordechai, that he says if you're misana on Shabbos morning, you can't be motzi somebody else. So the way the Beis Yosef is learning the misana, so the case is, why is the guy not drinking himself if he's motzi everybody else? His misana, he's fasting. So the Beis Yosef seems to overlook the fact that he's misana. Maybe he learns the lav dafka because he's going to eat somewhere else. Not really fasting. Maybe at this moment he's fasting. He doesn't look at it as dafka, because otherwise, what's the raya from Tapei Daled from Karpas? Over there doesn't say he's fasting. He's for sure not fasting on Pesach. Not allowed to fast on Pesach. So Shabbos, maybe you could say he's fasting. He has the Tanas Cholam going on, but Pesach you can't say that. You're not even Tanas Cholam. You're not allowed to fast. You're chayav and matzah. So you can't be misana over there. So the fact that he's comparing the two, then he must be learning that misana is lav dafka. Just want to point out that the magia on the Mordechai himself, the big day Yesha, on the Mordechai, he brings down B'Shem the Marshal, that the only reason you can't be motzi is dafka because it's misana. Because if you're misana, you're not eating at all. You're motzi yourself from being a bar chiyuva, and you can only be motzi through arva somebody else if you're a bar chiyuva yourself. So on the day that you're misana, your mamish fasting, you have tanas kolom, you're fasting. It is dafka, and it's only in that case couldn't be motzi. If you're not fasting, you're going to eat somewhere else. You're still a bar chiyuva. You can be motzi. The Mordechai never meant that you can't be motzi. So there's not even a machlokas about that case. It's only a machlokas about misana. But the Beis Yosef clearly didn't learn that way because he wouldn't be able to bring a raya from Hilchos Pesach to this. So he must be learning that it's lav dafka. Just something to point out. Okay. Yeah. Another point.
Wait, the Mordechai wouldn't be like just dafka in the ritva then? Like how
Yeah, then it would be according to the Marshal, it's a whole different machlokas. I don't know. I'm not sure what the machlokas is. It's the way we're explaining it. We're explaining the Mordechai according to the way the Beis Yosef understood it. And then that would fit into the mitzvah. But there is another way to understand it, because just the Beis Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch don't seem to be going that way. The Ramah. Because okay. Now what you mentioned before, the question of if you are if you can only be motzi a bucky or not a bucky, so that the source for that is the Ritzgeis, the Tur B'Shem the Ritzgeis, which is one of the early Gonim. You can only be motzi someone who's enu bucky. So the way I understood that, why should that be? What's the shot in that? So the way I understood it is, maybe you can understand the svora, that since the whole reason I'm motzi somebody else if I'm not myself is through arvus. Arvus means I'm responsible for him. So perhaps you could say I'm responsible for him to make sure he does what he can do when he can't do it. If he could do it as easily as I could, he knows himself what to do. So then why should I be responsible for him? Let him do it himself. So what gives me why should I be, if I'm not eating myself, I'm motzi because I'm responsible, why am I responsible for something he can do himself? I think it's a svor of the Ritzgeis. So therefore, if he holds he can only be motzi and eno bucky. And that the Shulchan Aruch actually passes that. The Shulchan Aruch throws that in. Says, he says v'yochal lahotziam nesif daled al pi she'enu nena v'hu she'enim yodin. That's only if they don't know. However, that is Shita the Ritzgeis. However, the Mishnah Berurah brings down Sekvat and Chaf in the name of the Pri Chodesh and Artas Achayim that you could be motzi even if they're not begiyim. It brings rayas that that's the Ikar Din as well. That really paskin that way in Ikar Din. There's a chumrah like the Ritzkeis, but the Ikar Din we do paskin that way, and therefore in places that the minhag was always to be motzi, even though people might be a baki. For example, the example they bring raya to this from Hilchos Tkiya Shofar, that if you already blew shofar for one tzibor, now you're blowing for another tzibor, you already yotzi yourself. So the minhag is that the Baal Tekeya blows again to be motzi the tzibor, even though they might be bekim, they can make the bracha themselves. So since that's a minhag, then we go back to the Ikar Din, and we say that we're not going to make a blanket statement. If I have a ravus, if I have a chayas for all the Jews, then I just have a chayas period. It doesn't matter if they're bekim or not. That's still my chayas until they're yotzei. I'm not fully yotzei myself. Then that extends my chayas to them as well.
Would it make a difference
Even if they are lucky? Sorry.
Would it make a difference if it's not brachas on mitzvos? Meaning, at the end of the day, if they're not a baki in regular brachas on enin, are you able to be motzi them? I don't think anybody says that, but
Nobody says that.
So what would be different if the svar is that you're responsible for somebody else? I know that the way that the mechanics of the bracha work is you can only be motzi brachas and mitzvos, but at the end of the day, where's the arvus and the responsibility for brachas and mitzvah as well? Maybe they could repeat after you, but then maybe they could repeat after.
For brachas and enin.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
So brachas and enin. So that the Gemara says that you can't say that there's arvus by a thing which he could decide not to eat. I'm only mechuyev to do what he's mechuyev to do, and because what he's mechuyev to do, then that becomes part of my chiyuv. Because then again, we don't have the shleimus. I don't have the shleimus of my own mitzvah unless he performs it as well. Because we're all like one, we're all am echad, like guf echad. That's part of also like the shem yichud that we do. Some say before you do a mitzvah, you say Shem Kol Yisrael. Just like I'm missing it if he doesn't do it. Also, when I do it, I want to do Shem Kol Yisrael. I want to mizak Kol Yisrael. We're all guf echad. With that. So halacha l'maisa, the Ikar Din is that we could be motzi even though the Shulchan Aruch says not that way, but the Mishnah Berurah brings paschals like the Achronim, the Ikar Din you could be motzi even if they are a baki. Okay, going to the next point. Beisesa brings a machlokas, the moram and the sarmi kotzi, a whole different Indian now. If the makadesh, it's mostly others, that's not being yotzi himself, like in the Gemara by where makadesh be knishta for the orchim. So it's clear from that Gemara there. It said that it's one of the bnei ir that's doing the kiddush for the people that are eating and drinking over there, that he is not being yotze himself. But Tosa says that he is he is drinking, that the person Makadesh is drinking a malad lugma to be yotze minimum of kiddush. So the Beisosa brings that some machlokas actually in the Mordechai, if you see the Mordechai and Sugya, I've already saw it inside. It's a machlokas the Muram and the Sarmi Kotzi, quoted by the Mordechai. If the Makadesh is allowed to drink the malay lugma if he's not being yotze himself, or does he have to give it to somebody else to drink? You're saying kiddush for the shul, you're not eating yourself. You're allowed to drink the malay lugma or not, or because it's usher to drink before kiddush, and I'm not being yotze kiddush. Maybe I'm just drinking before kiddush. Because we're talking about just the malay lugma. Because if you're drinking a revis, if you drink a whole revis, no shaila. Because then, according to the Gaonim and Sifhei, then I'm yotze myself kiddush there by drinking a whole revis, or maybe I need a revis plus a malugma. We'll see later on. We get to Sifhei. But if you're drinking a whole shiur, then there's no shaila. So we're only talking about you drink a malugma. Is that allowed or not? So that in the Beis Yosef, and it's in the Mordechai, it's a machlokas muram that says you're not allowed to, the Sarmi Kotzi that says you are allowed to. Hope I'm not switching it. So in the Bir Machlokas, I think we have to, it's similar to what we said a number of times already I think we can clear Hakira and the Shtiyas Male Lugmav that you're mechuyev to drink by a kushal bracha, let's say by Kiddush. So that, do we say that is it's just a hana you get to minene for the cover of the kos, or does that Male Lugmav is nepach to be a Shtiyah shel mitzvah? It's not considered just a Shtiyah lahana, but it becomes, since it's mechuyev b'tzad the Mrs. Kiddush to be outside, and a kos bracha needs a Male Lugmav, then that's nepach to become a Shtiyah shel mitzvah. Once it's a Shtiyah shel mitzvah, then it's not nichalal anymore in the Isser of the Isser of Shtiyah kodem Kiddush. Because what I'm not allowed to drink before Kiddush is my own Shtiyah, things that I want for my own hana. But something I'm drinking for the sake of the mitzvah, that's not nichalal in the Isser. I think that will be the Shaila. And so I'm going to bring a raya from Tosfos. There's a Tosfos in Kuv Vavam and Beis. There's a sugya there. We'll get there, I would say soon, but I don't know how soon. We're in the direction to get there. Kuv Vavam and Beis. There's a sugya of Ta'am Ein Makadesh. Question is how it passes with Ma'aseh, but the world says that if a person Friday night drink before made Kiddush, when it was supposed to make Kiddush, and you just drink some wine without making Kiddush, in a Makadesh, you're not allowed to make Kiddush till next morning. You have to hear Kiddush with somebody else, or you have to wait till tomorrow morning, because it's like a knas on the person for drinking Bisman Kiddush before Kiddush. There's a knas, you can't make Kiddush yourself. That's what the Gemara says. So Tosfos over there, Tosfos says that according to what he explained in the sugya of Beis Knesses, that we just mentioned that the lama, if you hold ein kiddush makmusuda, the Gemara asked the lama lekudusha Beis Knesses, why do they make kiddush in the shul if you're not yosei kiddush there? It says lahotzias orachim. So then Tosfos holds that it's muchak from the Gemara. It doesn't really speak it out. It's muchak from the Gemara that Shmuel that says that that you're not Yotzei Kiddush yourself, but you're Motzi to others, is only talking about a case where the guy drank himself. The one that was Motzi, he drank himself. What's the raya? Because Rabbi Yochanan said later on, there's three Mechalokos. We had Rav, Shmuel, and Rabbi Yochanan. Rav held Yesh Kiddush Shelo b'Makam Suda. You don't need Makam Suda. Shmuel held En Kiddush Ela b'Makam Suda. And Rabbi Yochanan said, not only Yadei Kiddush Yatza, also Yadei Yain Yatza. You're not only Yotzei Kiddush, you're also Yotzei Yain, because there's no Kiddush Shalom Makom Suda like Rav, and there's no din of Shin and Makom to take away the Brachas Yain either. So the Marshal explains, Tosfos Raya is that for sure, like Tosfos himself said, Rabbi Yochanan only said his din, you're Yotzei the Bracha of Yain if you drank some wine. Even Rabbi Yochanan says no din Shinu Makom. That's only if you at least drink some wine. If you only made a bracha in shul and asked to drink wine in your house, you for sure need to do Ber Gafen. Nobody would in the right mind would say that the bracha of the yayin without drinking works for another place. It's only if you made Ber Gafen, you drink some wine, and then the shinui makom doesn't take away the Ber Gafen. The already was chal on the yayin you drank for the house. So Rabbi Yochanan's din is only possible if you drink some wine. You drink them out of the lugmav. So since it's a three-way machlokas, the machlokas is all about the same case. They're not talking about three different cases. They're all talking about the same case. So if Rabbi Yochanan is talking about where you drink the wine, then Shmuel also is talking about where you drink the wine. Shmuel holds in Kiddush ala makom suda. How could that be? How did you drink the wine? You weren't Yotzei Kiddush yet. You're drinking wine before. And then Tosfos asks more. Tosfos says, if you hold Tom in a Makadesh, if you drink wine before Kiddush, you can't make Kiddush. So how can whoever makes Kiddush in shul, how can they make Kiddush back at home, like the Gemara says, if you already Tom in a Makadesh? So Tosfos says that the te'ima you drink for the sake of making Kiddush is not nichlal in the kanas, because it's part of Kiddush. As Tosfos says in Kuf Vav. So I want to extrapolate that to us as well, that that could be shot in the Rishonim by us, that there's no Isser, that the one who makes Kiddush to be motzi others, there's no Isser of Shtia, like that Tosas, because just like there's no Isser of Tam and Makadish, it's not part of the Chanas, it's part of the Kiddush. Mala Lugmav is needed for the Kiddush, so that's not Nichlal and Isser of Shtia Kodem Kiddush. I think that's a Gavalga Tosas over there. There's a riot to this Mahalach. Okay, so is that clear? Any questions?
No questions.
You take a look at it's Tosas Divrei Maskil. It's only a one-line Tosas. Divrei Maskil Tam and Makadish. To really understand Tosas, they have to see the Marsha, how he ties it together back to the sugya before. But basically, Tosas is saying that there's the tima of Kiddush before you yotze Kiddush, if it's for the sake of making Kiddush, is not Nichlal and Isra of Tom and a Makadish. You didn't do anything wrong. So virtually, Tosas is saying that the tima that you do when you make Kiddush to mimotzi others, since it needs a Mola Lugmav, then that's a chelik of Kiddush itself. It's not a separate tima before Kiddush, before making Kiddush. It's a din in Kiddush. So in the same way, it's also, that makes sense, like to bring a ride to the Rishonim over here to say that you're allowed to drink the Mola Lugmav, even though you're not Yotzi yourself. But the Maisa, that's the sheet of the Sarmi Kotzi. For the Shulchan Aruch is Machriya L'Chumra. He doesn't go with this Mahalach. I'm explaining shot in the Sarmi Kotzi, but the Maisa of the Shulchan Aruch is Machmir, like the Moram, that you should give it to a Tinuk. You shouldn't drink it yourself. If you're not being Yotze Kiddush yourself, you should give it to someone who is being Yotze Kiddush to drink. You shouldn't drink it yourself. We're saying a good shot maybe in the Sarmi Kotzi, but we don't paskin that way. Okay. Now there's a shaila Beis Yosef brings down. Actually, it's the Taz brings it down, or that could I be motzi somebody if I'm not eating the Suda? Could I be motzi somebody else? Just like I could be motzi them in Kiddush, could I also be motzi them in Hamotzi before eating the Suda myself? I'm not eating the Suda there now. So the Taz brings down that that's the shita of the Levush, is that I could be motzi, just like yayin, I could be motzi also brechas motzi, which in a sense makes sense, because if you look at the svara, the yisod that you're coming to be motzi, the tachlis over here is to eat with l'shem mitzvah. So why should it be any different than yayin? The brechas yayin of the brechas yayin that we just said that you could be motzi Shabbos morning, even though you don't have another brechas mitzvahs with it. The Shulchan Aruch paskins that you could be motzi, the Ramah paskins, you could be motzi in brechas yayin of Kiddush Rabbah Shabbos morning, even though you don't have a separate Kiddush bracha to be nigur after. We look at the Ikra Chiyuv. So the Levush looks at the Ikra Chiyuv of making a motzi is also for a mitzvah. It's a chovek like Kiddush. The Taz is very, very strongly cholek. Says the Ikra Suda Shabbos is to be din oneg, to be nene on Shabbos, to be nene. And just that hana is a mitzvah that turns into Suda Shabbos. But the mitzvah is to be nene, to be misaneg, and to be nene. And there, so it goes back to the klal of birchas hanenin. It's not considered birchas mitzvahs. So therefore you cannot be motzi. That's what the Taz holds. Mr. Brua, just in Sifkat and Yed Tes, he paskins the pashtus that you could be motzi. I mean, you cannot, like the Taz. So just to explain the machlokas, to go back to something we said near the beginning of the parak, that the levush, I think, is the shitasa. We mentioned the levush in the beginning of the parak. The Tzlach spoke about this, Tzlach and the levush, that there's a shala, what's pshat in Suda Shabbos, the Gimel Pamim B'Shabbos. So we had, is it pshat that it's mitzvah. It's a din of oneg, which is really din rabbanan, din divrei Kabbalah. Did we have an oneg Shabbos, and just we have a gilui. It says 3 times hayom. How many times the minimum of oneg should be at least 3 times a day, but the oneg is the real chiyuv. Or is it the tzlach explained that the gimel palam yom, I think it was also the bush there, that is a mitzvah deraisa to actually have an achilas suda Shabbos 3 times. And we had a whole question over there. Is it like achilas matzah, that there should be a din of not eating an erev Shabbos like erev Pesach, that you should eat b'te'avon? We said whether there's a din to eat b'te'avon or not depends on if it's a mitzvah achila like matzah, you have to be oichel b'te'avon, because it's a ma'isa achila, you have to do as behider, like the Rashbam said, you should do it behider like b'te'avon, because it's a ma'isa achila, you should do it b'te'avon. So if it's shalosh pamim deraisa, eat a ma'isa achila of Suda Shabbos, then that was one side, and therefore there's a din te'avon. That's what we saw over there in the first Amud of the Gemara. Masha Enkan, if it's just a din oneg, if you're full anyway, so you have less, you need to eat less to be an oneg. So there's no problem. There's no isser achila on erev Shabbos. Only on erev Pesach, where there's a din ma'isa achila, then you have to eat more b'te'avon. That's what we saw over there. So with that, we can explain what's going on over here. That's mamish the machlokas. Levush, the Shitasa holds that shalosh pamim yom it's a mitzvah of ma'isa achila. Therefore, he's holding over here that I can be motzi somebody else as well, because the ikra achila is a regular ma'isa achila, a ma'isa mitzvah, like any other ma'isa mitzvah, like the Brei Peri Gofen itself. But the Taz says beferish, the pshat is not that way. The pshat is that you're coming to do a ma'isa hana of oneg. It comes from there, and so be'etzem it's a birchas hana, and therefore I cannot be motzi. That's the machlokas. Now there's a question that l'chora we could be able to bring a raya from here, that maybe we should bring a raya. The Shulchan Aruch paskins, like I said, the Taz paskins and the Mishnah Berurah paskins over here, that you cannot be motzi like the Taz. So but the Mishnah Berurah paskins by Karpas and Tapei Dalid that I could be motzi even though I'm not eating. Over there's only achilas Brei Peri Adama over there. So why is that different than over here? So it's brought down Hashem Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that's all that Karpas is different. That over there you're not, even if you're not getting any hana or oneg, it's just a din to eat Karpas, so that the tiroko should ask. There's no din over there to be nene from the Karpas. Just to eat Karpas, that they should have a shiloh, why are we eating Karpas, washing and having a bracha and everything. So it's mamash a ma'isa achila over there, the shame mitzvah. It's not the shame hana, and therefore you can be motzi even though you're not eating yourself. My shenkin over here is, according to the Taz and the Mishnah Berurah, the whole ma'isa achila is achila shal tainug v'hana. So that puts it back into the realm of birchas hanenin, that I can only be motzi if I'm nana myself.
And it's actually not so enjoyable either, like the actual food of karpas.
Right.
It's not even.
Yeah, it's not so geschmack, you know. I mean, sometimes it is when you're really hungry and the seders, it's started late and everything. But if the potatoes made well, you know. All right. Okay, going into another point here. Going to Sifhei. Sifhei, we brought down the Shittas of Goinim that also that you can be Yotzei Kiddush Machmasuda also ayadei the Shtiyas Achilas Davar Muat or Shtiyas Yain. So Shalos, what's this Davar Muat? So according to the Shilta Giborim, you can be Yotzei according to the Goinim even by Achilas Peiros. It's by eating fruits. It's considered enough of the minimum of Kiddush Malchus Suda to be Yotzei, at least Kedusha Rabbah, at least Shabbos during the day. That's what the Shulchan Aruch is talking about Shabbos, not Friday night, but Shabbos day, where it's more kal. Magen Avraham Sifkat and Yud Aleph is docha that it says no, it's not true. Peiros do not work. It's only going to be like the Gonim say it's yayin, or cholapachas mazonos also, which even could even be better than wine. Now, in the Sefer Tshuvas von Haggis or Moshe Sternbach, so he has a lot of kashas on this data. That's actually the Psak of the Mishnah Berurah is like the Magen Avram, that you can be yotzei kiddush rabba, kiddush malchus by drinking wine or mazonos. So the Tshuvas von Haggis or Moshe Sternbach should live and be well. So he wants to tell you that it's a raya from Tosfos and Kuf Aleph, Tosfos ben Ar Sugya, that when the Gemara says, when Rabbah said to the Talmidim, before you leave, ta'imu midi, taste something before you go, because maybe the nair will go out, you won't be able to have a suit over there. Ta'imu midi, so it means lechem, it means pas. Tosfos and the Rush say that. So since they say ta'imu midi, like a minimum ta'ima is going to be pas, so then we see that to be yotzei kiddush, you need pas. How could we go with this Magen Ram to say he was on us? He brings also Rabbi Kiveger brings us that Ferris brings it down to Shem Rabbeinu Yonah that it needs to dafka be pas to be considered kiddush machmasuda. So he has a big kasha on our minhag on those that are knowing to have bezonos, but we know that is the minhag olam. So we need to find a teretz. I don't necessarily have a teretz to Rabbeinu Yonah, but that might be an isolated shita. But I just want to say it's never pashut. That's not a kasha from Tosfos and the Rush, because Tosfos and the Rush clearly understand. If you look in their carefully with their words, Kuf Aleph, when it says Te'inu Midi, it says Nir Dahainu Timas Lechem, because it says Timas Lechem Kadamri Inshi Nitom Midi Vazli Vachli B'Shasav in Moil Mini Targim Al Hashel Gimel Suda Shabbos Vasuka Hainu Dafka B'Suda Shlishis Lo B'Suda Saravis V'Shachar Shem Iker Kavod Shabbos. If it helps to be Mashlim Suda Shabbos Aydei Mini Targim Mazonos, that's only for Shal Sudas, not for the first two Sudas. Those are the Iker Sudas. And the Rush says the same thing. So I think it's a raya. I think Keneged these Tshuvas on Haggis, not a raya to him, because Tosfos and the Rush are clearly learning that when Rabbah said to his Talmidim, to Abaya and the Talmidim, Te'inu Midi, taste something before you go, he wanted them to be yotze, in case the candle is going to go out, to be not only yotzei kiddush but yotzei suda Shabbos. That's what Tosfos says. That don't think from the Talmud Midi can mean mazonos, because we're talking about Friday night. Because we're talking about the candle going out. So it must be Friday night, number one. We're not talking about Kiddush or Rabbah. We're talking about Friday night. And Friday night, he thought the candle might go out. You might not have a Suda over there because you won't be able to wash, won't be able to find the water to wash even. So the Yotzei Kiddush and the Suda Shabbat over here. And don't think it means Mazonos, because since we're trying to be Mashlim Suda Shabbos over here, then you're not going to be Yotzei Mazonos Friday night. So therefore it must mean Lechem. So Tosfos and the Rush are clearly saying that Rabbah is trying to gain the Meraviach Suda Shabbos, not just Kiddush. And it's clear from what Tosfos is saying that there's what they're saying is that there's two separate dinim in the din of Kiddush and Malchus Suda. There's Kiddush and Malchus Suda mitzad the Iker HaSuda, to be yotze the Suda, and there's a different level of Kiddush Malchus Suda to be considered enough of a Suda to be yotze Kiddush. There's Kiddush Malchus Suda that you eat enough to be considered mitzad the Kiddush to be Malchus Suda, and then there's being yotze the Suda itself, actual Suda Shabbos, and they're not necessarily the same thing at all. And I want to bring a raya to this, and again against the Tshuvas on Haggis, I'm a forced raya to what I'm saying from the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef said over here and said, hey, he wants to bring a raya that he said, first of all, l'chora, the Tosfos and the Rush are connected to the Gonim, because the Gonim say you could be yotzei with just the yain itself. Tosfos and the Rush say over here that you need pas. So he's addressing a unasked question, but it's an obvious question. that if Tosa and the Rush say that, then how did the Tur paskin like the going in without bringing any cholek? The Tur always goes to the Rush, his father. So how could the Tur be sosim like the going in when the Rush says like Tosas that Tziyum Amidi means Dafka Lechem? Says the Beis Yosef, it's not a kasha. What the Gonim is talking about, what they're talking about is to mean Yotzei Kiddush Makma Suda. The yain is enough to be considered a Suda, the minimum Suda, that the Kiddush is Makma Suda. But you're not Yotzei Suda Shabbos. Even the Gonim agree, you're not Yotzei Suda Shabbos with that Revius yain. You need to have a Suda besides that Revius yain. So Tosa and the Rosh say you need lechem. That's to be Yotzei Suda Shabbos, not just to be Yotzei Kiddush. Kiddush could have been just by the yain itself, by just drinking the yain alone. So you see clear from the Beis Yosef, there's two dinim in Kiddush Makma Suda. There's a din Kiddush Makma Suda inside the Kiddush, and the second din to be Yotzei Suda Shabbos. That's a whole different level of what you have to eat to be Yotzei Suda Shabbos. And therefore, there's no the Shuvas and Haggis has no riot from Tosas and the Rush against the minig that we're Yotzei in the morning when we have the zonas. Because you're not being Yotzei Suda Shabbos, you're being Yotzei just Kiddush Makma Suda. It's not a kasha. Okay, there's more to say about that, but well, I think we're about to leave it with that. And there is, I'll just throw out, there's the sheet of the Shulchan Aruch Harav, like the first Lubavitch Rebbe, the Shulchan Aruch Harav in Siman Kupei Ches, Hilchos Suda Sif Yud, that in the Shulchan Aruch Harav itself, it says there that when you yotze with mazonos, you have to have a Shiur Kviya Suda, which would be Daled Beitzim, which would be like a ton of cake, because it has to turn it into an actual Suda. But then the Magia there says that B'sof Yamav, he was Choser, he told him he's Choser, and you don't need that. You just need a minimum Shiur, like a Shiur Kazayas, like we always say. So, he was holding first that you're just Yotzei, there aren't two separate dinim, it's all one din. So if you Yotzei Kiddush Makma Suda, then it has to turn into a Suda, a real Suda, which should be a Shiur Daled Beitzim. But so if Yama was Choser, then it really is two separate dinim, like we're saying. According to the Havamina, the Shulchan Aruch Harav, it makes sense. Like some poskim say that if you do mazonos, then you have to have two cookies that are shleimin, to have like two lechems that are shleimin. That's because they must be learning that it's a real din, being Yotzei Suda Shabbos. But like we're saying, that's not the case. Okay. Now, we mentioned already before that the Taz and the Magen Avraham both say that the Mishnah Berurah says we should be machmir this way unless you're really stuck. You don't have enough wine that you should to be Yotzei the Gaonim. Then you should need a Shiur Te'ima besides a Shiur Revis besides what you drink to be Yotzei Kiddush. Because since you're being Yotzei Kiddush and then you're Te'ima Midi, you're eating something else, which would be Mizonos or Yayin. So like the Mizonos needs to be a Kazayas besides what you drink. Also, the Yayin should be a Revius besides what you drink. Based on that, the Taz has a kasha that the Ramaz Machriya that it's okay for the Moel to drink the wine as long as he drinks the whole Revis, drinks the whole kos. So he says, why is that okay? Since you're only having the kos itself, you're not drinking besides that, then it should be also to drink by the Mila. Because you're not drinking enough to be Yotzei, you have to have a whole Shiur besides that. So I don't understand the kasha because that's making the assumption that you only have a kos that's exactly a Shiur. But if you have a big kos like we do often, we don't have exactly a Shiur. Our kosas are usually a couple of reviews, at least according to Rabbi Na. So then you're always Yotzei Boshkitas. So kasha. Okay, okay. One more point here on this. Do you have time? Whoa. It's like, I feel like we just started. There's so much more to talk about. Maybe we'll there's a lot more to talk about here, but maybe we'll make up. There's to finish this off. It's going to go way too long. It'll take another half hour probably at least to finish this off. So maybe we'll talk about it next time. And did everybody finish the Marmakolos that we gave out last time?
I did not. We started going through Ramosha and then the Tzela Chachma.
Yes,
So we didn't start the Tzela Chachma. We're still in the middle of Ramosha.
Okay, so maybe we'll.
But is this what Rebbe just said? It sounds like it echoed a little bit in Ramosha, no? Like that there's a difference between Kvias, like a Kiddush and a Kiddush b'makom Suda.
So we'll speak about that. What Ramosha really means. We'll talk about that. So we'll save this for next time because there's really a lot here to talk about, and we'll call it here at this point. And I think we'll start from this point.
Who is the B'tzela Chachma?
His name was Betzalel Stern. You might have heard of the Deborah Sinner, Rav. The Deborah Sinner.
Yeah.
So that's his older brother. He was the Deborah Sinner. He was the. He was known as the Vienna Rav. He was the Rav of Vienna. He was a Goyen Adir, a Goyen Atzum. I was okay to talk to him a couple times. A few times I've haskama from him on Yom Tov Sheni. I was at his levaya. The few that were left, the Hungarisha, the great Hungarisha poskim that survived the war. He was one of those few, those giants from Hungary that had like his sons. I was sitting by the shiva by his sons. They were saying Sforim like Madani Yom Tov and the Rush. These type of Sforim, like the Korban Asano and Madani Yom Tov. He said those kind of Sforim. He had Baal Peh on his fingertips. And it goes without saying, he had Shas and poskim on his fingertips. That on his fingertips. For sure, had the Rush on his fingertips. You had the Madani Yom Tov and the Korban Asano on his fingertips. Like what they knew in those doors, it's hard for us to understand. But the godless that they had, such a giant, such a warm, just Malay Simcha, Malay Varmkeit. The times that I was often to meet him. Okay, so we'll take it from here at this point.
All right, Shkach.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good Shabbos, Rebbe.
Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.